Well, Bubba, another week means we're getting closer and closer and closer to the football season, and very excited to have this legend in North Carolina back on with us.
Absolutely, Dave. We continue to take a look at some of the other FBS programs around the state of North Carolina. And right now, we'd like to welcome back into the show the longtime play-by-play voice, Wake Forest Demon Deacons, Stan Cotten. Stan, we appreciate you joining the show this afternoon. How are you?
I'm great, Bubba. Thanks for the invite, David. Good to hear your voice as well. Anytime you introduce somebody as long time, that just means he's old.
And no, for in our business, Stan, that means that you're good, and they're keeping you because it seems like in radio and with coaches staff, I don't know which is the one that's the most competitive, and one that it's kind of like a game of Survivor. And I'm just glad that yourself and many others that I look up to and admire on Saturdays or whatever day there's a game that I can listen to you guys on TuneIn or Sirius XM for sure.
Well, I appreciate it. We've got a good group of folks at Wake and in Learfield, and it's a pleasure to work with them, and just to have the opportunity to do what we do on Saturdays is one I don't take lightly. I know a lot of folks would love to do it. All my buddies would trade for my job in a heartbeat. My job certainly beats, most 9-to-5ers, I think, with regard to some of the things, but not all of it, I guess. I guess it's all relative, but appreciate being on again with you guys.
And certainly. Like we were talking about off the air, Stan, that Wake Forest job is one that's very unique in terms of some of the challenges. Dave Clawson entering year 8. His first 2 years, going way back to 2014 and 15, I guess it was 3-9, but since then 34-27, has done a very good job there in Winston-Salem. So just tell us a general overview of the program before we hone in on this year's club.
Well, I think it's in a great place with Coach Clawson. You talk about him, you look over his career at every stop he's made. It's year 3 when things start to take hold, and that's what happened at Wake. And I think the ball has just continued to roll. The snowball, if you will, has gotten larger. We were also talking before we came on about the depth that he and his staff have begun to build at Wake. And, that's been kind of the thing over the years when Wake has had some of those dips. It's, I think you can attribute some of that, if not a lot of it, to just lack of depth overall. But I don't think that's the case as much anymore. Coach Clawson and his staff have done such a great job in figuring out the kind of animal that can survive at Wake Forest. And I mean by that, a young man that, number one, can get in school, number 2, can stay in school, but then 3, and that's the hard part, is to find the guy that can do both of those things, but also compete at a high level and compete with the Clemsons and the States and everybody else, Carolinas, you name it, in the ACC. And he's year after year, and I think increasingly so, been able to do that. I think going into this coming fall, I think this is the best depth that Dave Clawson has had. I don't think there's any question. I think if he were on with us, he would admit that. And so we'll see what that means in 2021 is. And I say it just about any time I'm on an interview. The late Skip Prosser used to say, and he loved football, but he said, man, I don't know how they do it, because when the ball bounces, you don't have a clue where it's going. So we'll see what bounces Wake gets and doesn't get in 2021. But at least on paper, I think, as I said, the depth is back. Wake returns almost every starter from a bowl team a year ago. The schedule is favorable, at least early. And so we'll see if the Deacs can put some hay in the barn out of the chute there and put some in the bank. We'll see what happens down the stretch.
Quick sidebar here, Stan. I'm glad that Bubba brought up the fact of 3-9 for the first 2 years, because you have Mike Houston, East Carolina, going into year 3, and we've seen that's another great example of someone who came in, turned the program around, and year 3 was the year. We'll see how it is for the Pirates, but Clawson, no doubt, has done a great job, like you said, every place. And here we are with year 8. If he were not doing a great job, he would not be making it. What a testament to him and his staff, like you talked about, that he's able to, like, it's a different animal. I know you said in the green room for sure, and been able to not only compete, but also at Wake Forest, you've got to be able to work in the classroom.
Yeah, it's a tough challenge, but I think Dave Clawson is the perfect guy. I mean, he himself at Williams College was in an academic setting, academic type of high academic type of an institution, and his other stops prior to Wake as a head coach very similar. So he kind of gets the landscape and understands what it takes to be successful, and so does his staff. They've been together for a number of years now, so they're again just the perfect group at the right time, and they've got it going. I mean, Wake's really made a commitment to football. The facilities are second to none in this league, and I don't think that's hyperbole. I think people come on Wake's campus and their jaws drop. They just can't believe the facilities now that Wake Forest has, and they're not through. I mean, there are plans for more. So just a good time at Wake in the football program. They've got it going pretty well, trying to get to another bowl game, and that would be 6 in a row, which has never happened at Wake. And again, we'll see. You have to go out and get it done now on the field, and that's next in line.
You talk about the offense, or really the team as a whole, returning a lot, but specifically on the offense from last year's Duke's Mayo Bowl team, all 11 of those guys who started that game, are back, including quarterback Sam Hartman. Anytime you have a signal caller of his caliber, you feel like you have a chance. So just talk about Sam and tell us what he's looking to improve on here in 2021.
Well, Sam, first of all, is a great leader, and that's what you got to have at quarterback. You really do, especially in the kind of offense that Dave Clawson runs. We were talking about it last night in his first radio show of the season, the run-pass option. So many decisions are made by the quarterback post-snap, and he's got to be able to read what's going on and then make split-second decisions that are going to affect the play just about every snap. So you have to have somebody that can do it, number one, and Sam Hartman's proven that he can do that. And you have a guy like Sam that won the starting job as a freshman. He's good. I mean, he was that good that quickly. Been around a long time now and has had to overcome some injury, lost his job because of that when he finally came back after a broken leg late in his freshman year, but won the job back. And he's a great teammate, elected captain. He's a good guy to have in the locker room because he's so well respected by his teammates. He's a good citizen, good student, all those things. He's just the perfect guy to have at that position. And he's also got a short memory. I mean, he doesn't turn the ball over much, but when he does, he just goes about his business on the next play and all those types of things. So I think, he was talking about Coach Clawson being the perfect coach at the perfect time. I think Sam Hartman's the perfect quarterback for this type of offense that Clawson and his crew want to run. And he's really settled into his role. I don't think he ever much tries to do more than he's asked to do. He understands his role and all those types of things. So I just think he's poised to have a really, really good year. And I think Wake Forest will probably go as far as he can lead them.
And as far as the offensive line, I know that a quarterback with Sam there, that he's going to obviously rely heavily upon the offensive line. I know there was some struggles maybe with the pass protection last year. Has that been corrected, you think, with spring football and, of course, fall camp?
Yeah, I just think, anytime with an offensive line, I mean, that's a group. I mean, it plays as one unit, but that's a lot of guys, right? I mean, you're talking about 5 individuals. And so I think these guys are back for another year. They did lose their right tackle in the offseason. So, but the guy behind him is kind of next man up type of deal. But this is a group that continues to gel, continues to work together. They feel really good physically. I think they felt that they lost some last year. They lost a lot of time in the locker room because of COVID, or the weight room because of COVID and all those types of things, or the kind of work that you would typically get in a quote unquote normal season. They feel a whole lot better going into 2021 than they did last fall with regard to just being physical and the type of lineman that you have to be to do well in the ACC. So Coach is, I think, very optimistic about the offensive line, and they've had a great fall camp thus far, avoided any camp injuries, and knock on wood, they'll be ready to go next week.
Before we shift over and talk about the defense, and tell us about some of the skill pieces that Sam Hartman has to get the ball to both at running back and wideout.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a big loss at wide receiver, but Wake is in the offseason, but deep there too. I mean, just Jacory Roberson is one of the better wide receivers in the country. The NFL scouts just love him. He had 62 catches last year for just short of 1,000 yards. And then you got a guy like Taylor Morin, who's been around for a couple of years and very quietly had 32 catches last year for a little over 400 yards. And then a guy like A.T. Perry, a young guy that's coming on, he's 6'5", about 210, had a great fall camp. He is very capable. Keyshawn Williams, another receiver who's I just think a really good player. Donald Stewart's a transfer from Stanford back for another year. He's another big body at 6'4", over 200 pounds, and both tight ends come back. So there are a ton of targets for Sam Hartman to look for. Jamal Banks is another guy, a freshman that's had a terrific fall camp, maybe as good a fall camp as anybody. And he's the biggest, one of the biggest of the group. He's about 6'5". So, and reminds Wake fans a lot of Scotty Washington, who did so well in Winston-Salem. So in terms of the receivers, I mean, Wake is just absolutely loaded. And there's also, I think, really, really good depth at the running back spot. Christian Beal-Smith is back for another year with 2 or 3 guys behind him, including a transfer from Michigan, Christian Turner, who's had a good fall camp. So I think skill is kind of loaded, so it looks pretty good. Wake averaged, trying to think, about 35, 36 points a game. That certainly wasn't a problem. That's going to win most games. Where Wake's got to do some shoring up is on defense and defense in the red zone, some things like that.
Well, Stan, that was a nice, that's why you're a legend, a nice transition as we were going to talk about the defense side of the ball. Talk about that. So some improvements need to be made with the defense.
Yeah, and you got to start by replacing one of the better players to ever play at Wake, defensive lineman Boogie Basham. He's off to the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. But Rondell Bothroyd's going to step up, and I'm not sure any one player can fill Boogie Basham's shoes right away, but Bothroyd might be able to. I mean, he's about 260, 65 pounds, about 6'5", runs really well. But along that defensive front, and we might have talked about this, I bet we did last time, that might be one of the better spots defensively in terms of depth that Wake has. They've got a lot of bodies along that defensive front, along the interior, that have played a lot of snaps. Where Wake has some question marks is, in that secondary at some spots, just in terms of experience and all those types of things. And they got to gel together, as we talked about earlier, in the red zone. And we were talking about Wake offensively scoring about 36 points a game or so. I think the numbers last year for the Wake defense giving up a little over 30. So you got to cut that down. I mean, you just have to. You can't rely on your offense to score every other time it's got the football. I mean, I think Wake will score a lot of points, but they can't certainly give up as many. Right? I mean, the bottom line is to score more than your opponent, right? I mean, that's the deal. So as long as Wake can improve some defensively, I think the offense will keep pace from a year ago, if not be even a little bit better. And that should leave Wake in a pretty good spot.
We talk about showing defensive improvement, and talk about, who do you visualize, from just talking to the coaching staff as being some of those key cogs in making a turnaround on that side of the football?
Well, a guy like Ryan Smenda at linebacker had a great year last year, and is just a solid football player. He's played a lot at Wake, and he'll be counted on as well. Luke Masterson is a guy that's been around. He's one of those redshirt seniors, and because of the COVID year, he's been around forever. Wake's got an interior lineman, Miles Fox. This is his 7th year playing college football because of COVID and transfers and all this kind of stuff. But Luke Masterson's a guy that started his career as a secondary guy, but now is going to be counted on at linebacker. He's bulked up. He's about 230 pounds, and he's a name that I'm going to be calling a lot. Another one, Jasir Taylor, Nasir Greer. Those are secondary guys. Taylor a corner, Greer a safety. They've played a lot of football for Wake, and those guys are going to be counted on heavily in that secondary to shore things up. Wake's got a lot of young talent at corner and some coming in at safety. Nick Anderson was a guy that crashed onto the scene last year as a walk-on, played a lot of football, intercepted 3 passes against Virginia Tech, was awarded a scholarship in the spring, and he's going to be counted on, and he looks good. I mean, he's been banged up a little bit in fall camp, but they know what he can do, and him maybe not taking as many reps as you might want him to still allows a young guy or two to step up. So Wake's got all the parts defensively. They just need to play a little bit better together and bow their necks a little bit in the red zone.
Dave, obviously we know, Dave, Stan, we obviously know that with when it comes to the third side of the ball, if you will, special teams, huge, especially when you're thinking about Wake Forest, a team that's competing at the highest level in the Atlantic Coast Conference. How are special teams this year?
Well, I mean, I guess you start with Nick Skiba. He's the NCAA record holder with regard to made field goals in a row with 34. He's never missed an extra point. So, I mean, he's as good as it gets in terms of a place kicker. I mean, he's just automatic. I mean, they haven't called on him to kick many over 50 yards. I mean, his longest career kick's 47. But he is so stinking automatic. It's crazy. When he was going through that string of 34 straight to set the national record, it was just crazy. I mean, they were seemingly all just right down the middle. He was in some kind of zone, and so he's back, and he's had a great fall camp. Ivan Mora was a redshirt freshman punter last year. He's back and is very solid. I think what Wake really needs to find him is a kick returner that can really light it up. I mean, Wake's got some pretty good team speed, but it's been a while since Wake had a guy back there returning kicks that really scared the daylights out of the defense or out of the team that's kicked the ball to him. So we'll see. I think we'll see maybe some experiments back there. I'm not sure. I don't want to throw out many names right now because there are a lot of guys kind of trying out, if you will. But Taylor Morin, one of the wideouts, was the punt returner last year. Wouldn't shock me if he's back there this year. We'll see what happens with kick returns. But Wake's got enough guys that can handle the football and have good enough speed to pick from. We'll just see which one or two show up come next week.
Stan, tell us about the schedule. I know the first 3 games are at home against Old Dominion, Norfolk State, and then Florida State, and then 4 out of the first 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when you didn't play the full allotment last year, I mean, you always look ahead, and we were talking last night with, again, with Coach Clawson, just about the schedule, and he was kind of knocking on wood and saying, hey, I hope we're going to play 12. We'll see. But, it starts off with a couple of teams from up in Virginia across the street from one another, Old Dominion and Norfolk State in weeks 1 and 2. And then that third week with Florida State in Winston-Salem on September the 18th, I think that's a really big game for Wake. If they can take care of business against ODU and Norfolk State, which they're expected to, but obviously you got to play and see if you can go do what you're supposed to do. But then you get Florida State. If you could get by the Seminoles at home, that gets you to 3-0 before you go take on Virginia in Charlottesville in that fourth week. And then in the middle of the schedule, you've got Louisville and another trip to Syracuse, bye week before you go to Army. Army's always those, service teams are always tough. They're running that triple option all the time. All of them are seemingly, and that's hard to defend. But Wake's got a bye week prior to Army to get ready for that. Then you got another big conference game with Duke at home to end October before a really tough stretch at Carolina, State at home, at Clemson, at BC. I was talking about maybe getting some hay in the barn early before you get to November and play 3 out of your last 4 away from Winston. You don't want to, get to November having to win a bunch of games to get to a bowl game. So we'll see. But if, again, like we said at the top, if Wake can avoid some injuries at key spots and get some wins early, then I think it sets up pretty good for another bowl run. But if Coach Clawson heard me right now, he'd probably tell me to shut up and just talk about, week 1 and 2. Let's don't get ahead of ourselves. We can do it. But he probably hopes that none of the players hear me talking about November. But, we'll see. But I do think, especially early, the schedule is a good one for Wake. But you got to go take care of business. You can't look past anybody these days. I mean, Old Dominion didn't play last year, hadn't played since 2019.
Right.
They've got a new staff, but they got a lot of good players, guys that have played Division I football. So they're going to be anxious to get on the field. They'll be really, really hungry when they come to Winston, and I'd be surprised if ODU didn't play pretty well.
Stan, obviously one of the big things that everybody's talking about, speaking of talking heads, is with the alliance between the Atlantic Coast Conference with the ACC, of course, Pac-12 and Big Ten. I want to get your thoughts on it because I'm still kind of, I guess it's a wait and see. It seems like this year, if you could describe one thing with many different storylines with college sports and athletics, it would be, I would say there's 3 words, wait and see. And this seems like another one with the alliance.
I think for sure that really fits the alliance. I mean, there's nothing signed. There's nothing, no signatures on paper anywhere. Who knows what will happen in the short term? Nothing really. Now, in a few years, will Wake be playing Washington State? Pick somebody. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't think anybody does right now. So, the alliance is kind of just an answer, if you will, to what's going on in the Southeastern Conference. Wake trying to, or rather the ACC and those other 2 leagues trying to stay kind of up with it and in the flow of things as the landscape of college football changes. I think with what's going on in the SEC and as this alliance formulates a little more over the years, there'll be changes to the college football playoff, and I think that's a good thing. I think we should add more teams. I mean, I come from a Division II background where you play it off every year, and a 1AA background at Marshall at the time where you played it off every year. So I think, Division I can, and I'm an old guy now, 1A, they can play it off. If you can do it on other levels, it can happen at this level too. You just have to figure out the bowl structure and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of smart people that can figure all this stuff out. And I think, a larger playoff in college football would be a really, really good thing. That's my view of it anyway. But you're right. The alliance is just kind of something for the future, really, something maybe to kind of put in the back of our minds right now and wait till some things really settle in. Television's going to be involved in all this, and who knows what will happen and how the landscape will continue to change over the years. I'm sure it will. I mean, you toss in name, image, and likeness, COVID, alliances, conferences changing. I mean, it's just crazy what we've seen over the last couple of years. We've talked a lot about that, Coach Clawson and I did last night. Just the last year and a half, 2 years, the changes we've seen compared to the previous 20, it's just crazy.
No doubt about it. You read my mind once again about name, images, likeness. Before we let you go, we wanted to ask you about that. Your thoughts on that? Will Winston-Salem is a big area. Will there be places that businesses, if you will, that corporations around there that the Deeks can get a deal?
Sure, I think that's going to happen, and it's happened to a small extent to a few players on the basketball side and the football side. I mean, it's interesting on, how that's going to be done. I mean, the coaches can't help the kids. I mean, that's part of it. So I think it's a good thing. I mean, I really do. I mean, I like as much freedom as those guys and gals can get. I think they've earned it. Yes, they're on scholarship, but there are some limitations to that. So I'm all for it. I think it's good. I think now they'll, as that develops too, I'm sure some hurdles will pop up that going to have to be figured out. But I think all in all, and generally, it's a good thing. It's a long time coming, and if I were a player right now, I certainly would be all for it. I think the coaches are generally for it for the most part, and so I think because of that, I think you'll see it get better, and it'll be enhanced in the short term and years to come.
It sounds like I said, it's a crazy world we're living in, Stan, with regards to athletics and just in general. Thank you so much as always. And one final thing, how can people hear the Demon Deacons this year with you guys?
Well, we've got a statewide network, Wake Forest Sports Network. The best thing for Wake fans to do that are maybe outside the footprint of some of our radio stations across the state, just download the Wake Forest Game Day app. It's a free download. You can listen anywhere in the world. We've got people listening in Rwanda, of all places.
Wow.
I've gotten some tweets from people in Africa, Australia, and Europe listening to us free, live on the Wake Forest Game Day app. And that's probably for folks, again, outside our listening area to do it. You can go to godeeks.com, listen online as well for free. And that's the best way probably to do it if we don't have a station in your neck of the woods.
All right, Stan, as always, good luck this season in 21, and we'll try to have you back again, obviously, for basketball. We'll see how things play out this season.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. Great to talk to you.